Samantha and Julia were both 17, best friends bonded not only by their youth but by a shared dream, love, romance, and one day, a beautiful wedding. They would often spend evenings talking about their future husbands, imagining the perfect man, someone kind, dependable, maybe even a little mysterious. Life in their small town was simple, and everything felt like a story waiting to unfold. One evening, that story took a very real turn. During one of their usual evening walks, they met Alex, an older, confident man with a charm neither of them expected. He struck up conversation, and although it was unusual, something about him felt exciting. Alex invited them to hang out at his family's cabin, where they also met his quiet and polite friend Ethan. Unlike Alex, Ethan was reserved, the kind of man who didn't say much but made people feel safe. Julia, normally shy and soft-spoken, found herself drawn to Ethan's gentle presence. The connection was instant, but innocent at first. Over the next few weeks, Julia and Ethan started seeing each other more often. Ethan was kind, patient, and treated Julia with the kind of respect she'd always hoped for. It wasn't long before they officially started dating, with Samantha cheering her on. While their relationship moved quickly, it felt right at the time. Ethan became her first real love, the first man to truly see her. Within a year, they got married. For a girl like Julia, who had always longed for stability and affection, this felt like a dream come true. She loved the idea of being a wife, of building a home with someone dependable. But what neither of them realized was that this fairy tale had started on fragile ground, rooted more in youthful fantasy and emotional longing than in real-life experience or self-awareness. And though Julia thought she had found her happily ever after, life would soon show her, and Ethan, that some dreams come at a cost they weren't ready to face. Julia once believed that marrying Ethan was the happiest decision of her life. He was kind, attentive, and made her feel safe. A steady presence in a world that sometimes felt too big for a shy girl like her. But as time passed, the reality of marriage began to sink in. While Ethan remained devoted and reliable, Julia couldn't ignore a quiet restlessness growing inside her. She had jumped into the first serious relationship of her life and committed fully, without ever truly exploring who she was outside of that relationship. Her days became a routine, comfortable, yes, but also predictable. And with comfort came doubt. She began to wonder if she had settled too soon, chosen love out of gratitude rather than true passion. At a friend's party one night, emotions she had long buried came to the surface. She met a man who sparked something in her: excitement, danger, temptation. One careless moment of weakness led to a mistake. She slept with him, and tried to bury the guilt that followed. Weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. Ethan, blissfully unaware of the infidelity, was overjoyed at the news. He embraced fatherhood with open arms, preparing the home, dreaming of their future, and supporting Julia every step of the way. Meanwhile, Julia was silently drowning in guilt, unsure whether the baby was Ethan's or not, and too afraid to confess the truth. When their daughter, Vicky, was born, Ethan loved her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He never once questioned her paternity, never doubted Julia's loyalty. And that made the weight of Julia's secret even heavier. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect family. But beneath that picture was a young woman torn between the comfort of the life she had built, and the shame of a single decision that could destroy it all. As time went on, Julia hoped the truth would stay buried. But secrets have a way of rising, and hers was no different. Little did she know, the moment of truth would come sooner, and more painfully, than she ever expected. Vicky's first birthday was meant to be a celebration, a beautiful milestone in the life of the little girl Ethan had grown to love more than anything in the world. He had thrown himself into fatherhood with his whole heart, despite the long work hours and exhaustion. Every diaper change, every sleepless night, every little laugh from Vicky only deepened his bond with her. Julia watched this with a mix of gratitude and guilt. Ethan was the perfect father, and yet, in the shadows of their seemingly happy home, she carried a secret that haunted her more with each passing day. She wasn't sure Ethan was the real father. She had convinced herself that if she buried it deep enough, if she loved Ethan with enough sincerity, the truth wouldn't matter. But on the night of Vicky's birthday, Julia made a mistake, one that shattered the fragile illusion she had built. Half asleep, talking in her dreams, she mumbled fragments of the past, about the night of the party, about the other man, and the possibility that the baby might not be Ethan's. Ethan, who was lying beside her, stiffened. He didn't speak. He didn't shake her awake. He just listened. And in that quiet moment, his entire world shifted. The next day, Ethan said nothing to Julia, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Torn between fear and heartbreak, He ordered a DNA test in secret. The wait was agonizing, and when the results arrived, they confirmed his worst fear: he was not Vicky's biological father. Ethan's heart didn't just break, it collapsed. But instead of exploding in anger or confronting her with rage, Ethan did something unexpected. He chose composure. He calmly sat down with Julia and told her what he knew. The moment she saw the envelope in his hand, her face fell. There was no point denying it. Through tears, she confessed about the one-night mistake, the uncertainty, the shame, and the fear of losing him if the truth ever came out. Ethan listened. And then he stood up, walked away, and started preparing for the next chapter of his life. He filed for divorce, but not out of hatred, out of clarity. Trust, once broken, couldn't be rebuilt with tears. But there was one bond he wasn't willing to let go of: Vicky. Despite everything, Vicky was still his daughter in every way that mattered. He had held her hand as she learned to stand, rocked her to sleep when she cried, and whispered silly stories to make her laugh. Blood didn't define fatherhood, love did. So, while his marriage crumbled, Ethan made a vow: Vicky would never feel the impact of her mother's mistake. She would never know the truth unless it truly mattered one day. And as for Julia, she had lost not just a husband, but the man who had loved her more than she ever deserved. Just when Ethan thought the pain couldn't cut any deeper, life delivered one final blow, one he never saw coming. Months had passed since the divorce. He had done his best to rebuild his life, focusing on Vicky, showing up for her with unwavering love and consistency. He kept things civil with Julia for their daughter's sake, but their conversations remained strictly about logistics, school, doctor's appointments, nothing more. He never asked about her personal life. He didn't want to know. He thought he was done being surprised until one afternoon, during a casual drop-off, Vicky innocently mentioned something that froze him in place. "Uncle Alex makes the best pancakes," she said. Ethan blinked. Alex? His old friend, the one he introduced to Julia all those years ago, the one who was there the night they first met. Surely it was a coincidence. But when he asked Julia directly, her silence said everything. Yes. She and Alex were together now. Ethan didn't explode. He didn't scream. He just looked at her and felt a fresh wave of betrayal settle into his bones. It wasn't just that she had cheated. It was who she had cheated for. Alex, the man Ethan had once trusted, laughed with, and confided in. The same man who knew every detail of Ethan and Julia's relationship, the ups, the downs, the intimate moments Ethan had once shared as a friend. That man was now living in Ethan's shadow, raising the child Ethan still called his daughter. Julia tried to explain. She said it had just happened, that Alex was there for her during the separation, that they connected in a way she couldn't ignore. Then came the worst part, her admission that she had always had feelings for Alex, even during her marriage. That being with Ethan felt like the safe choice, but Alex had always stirred something deeper. Ethan didn't need to hear more. He turned and walked away, not because he was weak, but because he was finally strong enough to let go completely. There was no point confronting Alex. The man had already shown what kind of friend he was. From that day forward, Ethan cut ties entirely. He kept his focus on Vicky, protecting her from the adult mess she'd one day have questions about. She was the only innocent one in the story, and Ethan refused to let her feel the bitterness he carried. He had lost a wife, a best friend, and a sense of certainty, but he had gained clarity, strength, and a purpose rooted in love that couldn't be faked or stolen. And that was enough. In the months that followed, Ethan lived in a strange quiet. Not the kind born from peace, but from absence. The absence of trust, of companionship, of the life he thought he was building. He had lost not just a wife, but a friend. Not just a marriage, but the future he envisioned. And yet, amid that silence, something unexpected began to grow: clarity. With every quiet morning spent making Vicky's breakfast, every bedtime story read with tenderness, Ethan found himself slowly, quietly reclaiming his identity, not as a husband, or even a betrayed man, but as a father. His days revolved around Vicky. School drop-offs, weekend walks in the park, silly jokes that only she laughed at. She was the one thing in his life that had never lied to him, never failed him. Loving her was effortless. Through her, he began to rediscover joy, not the loud kind, but the soft, steady kind that comes from presence. Still, Ethan struggled to trust again. He kept to himself, politely avoiding attempts by coworkers to set him up or encourage him to move on. It wasn't bitterness. It was fear of being fooled again, of opening his heart only to have it crushed by another hidden truth. But life has a way of showing up when we least expect it. One evening, as Ethan was walking home from the grocery store with Vicky, He noticed a woman being harassed by a group of men outside a corner store. Without thinking, he stepped in. Calmly but firmly, he told them to back off, and they did. The woman, shaken but grateful, thanked him and introduced herself. Her name was Claire, and there was something in her eyes, a mix of strength and sadness, that felt familiar. Over time, Ethan and Claire crossed paths again. Sometimes with Vicky at the park, sometimes at the same coffee shop on quiet Sunday mornings. Their conversations were light at first, then deeper. Claire had her own past, her own wounds, and she didn't hide them. That honesty, that openness, it disarmed Ethan. She didn't pretend to be perfect, and that's what made her real. Slowly, Ethan's walls began to lower. Not in a rush, not with dramatic declarations, but in small ways, trusting her with stories of Vicky, sharing the lessons he'd learned, and finally, letting someone see the scars he once tried to hide. Ethan knew he wasn't the same man he once was. He was wiser now, slower to give away his heart, but stronger, too. And in that strength, he found something unexpected: hope. Maybe love didn't have to be perfect. Maybe it just had to be honest. Looking back on it all, Ethan realized that life has a way of teaching the hardest lessons through the deepest pain. What started as a young, hopeful love had unraveled into betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, not just of a marriage, but of trust, identity, and friendship. And yet, through the wreckage, Ethan found something far more lasting than bitterness: wisdom. The kind of wisdom that only comes when you've seen the truth for what it is and refuse to let it destroy you. He had once believed that love was enough, that being good, loyal, and kind would guarantee loyalty in return. But life doesn't work that way. People hide things. They settle. They lie, sometimes to protect themselves, sometimes because they're not brave enough to tell the truth. And while Ethan couldn't control the choices of others, he had full control over how he responded, and that became his power. Through it all, his daughter Vicky was his anchor. Even when he learned she wasn't biologically his, it didn't change the love he had for her. Because fatherhood, he came to understand, is not measured by DNA, but by devotion. That truth became his grounding force, a reminder that love, in its purest form, is a choice, not a condition. He also learned to listen more closely to his intuition. Looking back, there were signs. Subtle things, moments of hesitation, emotional distance, unexplained behavior, that he brushed off in the name of trust. He learned that trusting someone doesn't mean ignoring your gut. It means observing, asking, and paying attention when something doesn't feel right. But perhaps the greatest lesson was this: healing doesn't require revenge, it requires release. Ethan didn't ruin Julia's life. He didn't confront Alex. He didn't drag anyone through the mud. He simply chose peace. He walked away from what was toxic, preserved what was sacred, his bond with Vicky, and let the rest fall away. When Claire entered his life, she wasn't a replacement for the past. She was proof that the future could still be bright, even after betrayal. Their connection reminded him that love could be honest, grounded in truth rather than fantasy. He didn't need grand gestures or perfect promises. He needed someone who could meet him where he stood, wiser, guarded, but open. Ethan's journey is a reminder to us all that life doesn't always give us what we imagined, but it often gives us exactly what we need. Sometimes we lose people to find ourselves. And sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings. In time, Ethan came to realize that healing isn't about forgetting, it's about learning to carry the truth without letting it harden your heart. The betrayal he experienced, both from Julia and Alex, had cut deeply. It changed how he saw love, loyalty, and even himself. For a long while, he walked through life cautiously, almost mechanically, present for his daughter, polite to the world, but guarded where it mattered most. And no one could blame him. After giving his all and being deceived, trust didn't come easily. But hearts, even when wounded, are not made to remain closed forever. Over time, and in the most unexpected way, someone gently began to unlock his, not with grand gestures, but with presence, patience, and honesty. Claire never tried to fix him. She didn't press for more than he could give. Instead, she offered something Ethan hadn't realized he craved so deeply: understanding. She had been through her own storms. Her openness about her past created space for Ethan to share his, piece by piece. And in that safe space, he found that not all love stories are meant to sweep you off your feet. Some arrive slowly, without noise, and instead of fireworks, they bring peace. That's what Claire brought. A quiet reminder that love didn't have to be dramatic to be real. Through this new chapter, Ethan learned one of life's most important lessons: Guarding your heart is wise, but closing it completely is a loss of its own. Love, when given carefully, can still bloom after betrayal. But it has to be rooted in truth, mutual respect, and emotional maturity, not fantasy, not illusions. He also came to accept that not all wounds need vengeance to heal. Walking away without hatred was a victory in itself. Letting Julia and Alex fade into the background of his story was the kindest thing he could do, for himself, for Vicky, and for the future he was now building. Now, when Ethan looks at his life, he sees the pain not as a defining chapter, but as a turning point. He's not the same man he once was, and that's a good thing. He's more aware, more discerning, and more grateful for the little things, an honest conversation, a shared laugh with Claire, Vicky's hugs after school. If there's one truth he now lives by, it's this: love is not something you stumble into, it's something you choose, with eyes open and heart steady. And when it's real, you won't have to question it. Life rarely plays out the way we imagined in our youth. We built dreams around love, loyalty, and trust, only to find that people, even those closest to us, can carry secrets we never expected. Ethan's story is a powerful reminder that betrayal can come silently, even from those who once made us feel safest. But more importantly, it teaches us that healing is not found in anger or revenge, it's found in clarity, dignity, and choosing peace. For those in their 40s and 50s, this is a lesson many come to learn the hard way. Not every relationship is meant to last, and not every love deserves to be saved. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away with grace and protect the part of you that still believes in something real. True strength isn't in how loudly we react, it's in how quietly we rebuild. And even after heartbreak, love is still possible, but this time, with eyes open, boundaries firm, and wisdom earned. Never ignore your intuition. Never settle for less than honesty. And remember, the peace you protect today will shape the life you live tomorrow.